But we begin tonight with Frank Luntz and his focus group. They got the chance to speak to one of the other candidates that made very big headlines last night, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Watch this.
Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, what would you want this South Carolina audience to know about you and your candidacy?
Well, listen, rather than give a speech, you guys have endured a 2.5-hour debate, so the last thing you need is filibustering. I do think we saw some good contrast tonight. I do think we had a good opportunity to compare the candidates, compare our records, compare our vision. I thought, by the way, I thought Fox Business did a fabulous job moderating. I haven't always thought that, but this one I thought we had good questions. You know, what I would love to do, rather than yabber at folks, is just have a conversation. I mean, I'd love to ask you guys, what do you wish had been asked? What do you wish we had been talking about?
I want to hear about the health care. How are we going to change this? I'm in the healthcare field, and I fear for the future of our country in healthcare. How can we change it if you're elected?
Listen, healthcare, it's fundamental to all of us. I think we need to start by repealing every word of Obamacare. I think Obamacare has been a disaster. Excellent. I've actually never seen those dials. I've watched them on TV, but it's pretty cool to see them.
By the way, there's your score right there. You're at an 83-86.
But, well, listen, once we repeal Obamacare, nobody thinks we're done. I think we need common sense health care reform, and I think it needs to follow principles of expanding competition, expanding the marketplace, and empowering consumers to make health care decisions in consultation with their doctors.
When you say repeal, how easy is that to actually do?
So it's a great question. It's not easy to do. And the sad reality is an awful lot of politicians in Washington, both Democrats and a lot of Republicans, are largely resigned to Obamacare being a permanent feature of our economy. The only way I think we can repeal it is to make this election a referendum on repealing Obamacare and also on adopting a simple flat tax. Those are the two big legislative packages that I'm running on. Neither one of those could get done today in Washington. But if we come out of November 2016 with a mandate from the people, you change the rules, you change the dynamics in Washington. You know, there's an old joke that politics is Hollywood for ugly people.
That's right.
Which my wife says I resemble that joke. But, you know, go back to 1981. Think about the last time we beat what I call the Washington cartel, the career politicians in both parties that get in bed with the lobbyists and special interest. The Reagan Revolution came from the people, and it was this incredible tidal wave that changed Washington. And, you know, in 1981, Tip O'Neill, the Democratic Speaker of the House, told Ronald Reagan, don't even send your tax plan over. It's dead on arrival. I've got 20 votes to kill it. And Reagan didn't go and try to cajole him and use his Irish wit. Reagan went over their heads. Reagan went to the American people, made the case to the American people. People began lighting up the phones. And Tip saw his votes disappearing. 20 became 19, became 18, became 17. And that's how we got tax reform cutting the top rate from 70% to 28%. That's the only way we actually repeal Obamacare, is that same sort of grassroots movement from the people.
But they're very skeptical, and I want the second row to answer this question. I'm going to start with you. I asked you all what you think of Congress, and none of you like the Republicans there, even though you're all Republican. Give the senator a word or phrase to describe what you think of Congress.
Do nothing.
Traitorous. I hate to say this, but with all due respect, it's a big, embarrassing joke.
Yep.
Joke.
Out of touch.
Yeah, I'd say a traitor except for you, because I've started reading your book.
Thank you.
I'd say unprincipled.
Weak. Inept.
So as a way to close out this segment, why are you different?
Well, listen, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, people are frustrated out of our minds. For one thing, we keep winning elections. We won a tidal wave election in 2010, won control of the House. We won another tidal wave election in 2014. And what does leadership do? It funds all of Obama's priorities. It funds Obamacare, it funds amnesty, it funds the Iran deal, it funds the Syrian refugees. I mean, it's nuts. And the only way to change it, look, it is coming from the people. You know, what I've tried to do in the Senate from day one has been two things: tell the truth and do what I said I would do. And I promise you, by the way, as bad as you think it is, it's worse. Susan mentioned very kindly that she's reading my book. You know, the whole book is about what I call the Washington cartel. It's about telling the inside story, where what's happening is leadership in both parties, they're not listening to the people who elected them. They're listening to the big money in Washington. And the only way to change it is going back to the last time we did, is building a grassroots movement. It's why all of my time is in the grassroots, trying to energize, trying to empower. Because frankly, I can't break the cartel, but you can. That's the only power strong enough, is the people rising up and forcing the elected officials in both parties to listen to them and be accountable to them.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Does he sound different to you?
Yes.
Well, you're going to get a chance to ask him. Wait. Does he sound different to you? Yes or no? Who says he sounds different than the typical member of Congress? Raise your hands. Yeah. Not bad. Who says he doesn't? 2 people. What question would you ask Senator Cruz?
The question I would ask you is, what makes you think you can beat Hillary Clinton?
Great question.
Great question. Look, it is the single most important question. I think our country is in crisis. If we keep going down this road, we're going to lose our country. We're going to lose. My daughters are 7 and 5. I'm scared for the country they inherit if we don't win. Now, what we hear over and over again on TV from all the folks in Washington is the way we win is to run to the middle, is to run and basically to run Democrat light. That's what we're told. And I'm a numbers guy. I'm a data guy. We got to win. If you look at the last election we won, 2004, you compare it to 2008 and 12, the single biggest difference is the millions of conservatives who showed up in 04, who stayed home in 08, and stayed home in bigger numbers in 12. And they fall basically into 2 categories: evangelical Christians and Reagan Democrats, blue-collar, working-class Catholics. I think the #1 issue, if we're going to win in 2016, is how do you bring those millions of conservatives back to the polls? And I'll tell you, Heidi and I, before we launched the campaign, I mean, we spent a lot of months in prayer thinking about it. You don't lightly throw a young family with 2 little girls into the insanity of a presidential race. And the biggest factor that led us to go forward is that I look at the other candidates, people who I like and respect. I don't see any other candidates who I think are likely to energize and mobilize and inspire those millions of conservatives who've been staying home, and to bring together that old Reagan coalition. And the reason I decided to run is that I think, based on the record I've built of standing and fighting for conservative principles over and over again, that I'm in the best position to bring the evangelicals back, to bring the Reagan Democrats back, to reassemble that Reagan coalition. And that's the only way I believe we win.
How many of you think, if it's Ted Cruz versus Hillary Clinton, how many of you think Ted Cruz wins?
You better.
How about that?